Good afternoon. Around 120 firemen were called to a huge blaze at a tyre storage depot near Callington in East Cornwall last night. Fireballs leapt 200 feet into the air as hundreds of thousands of old rubber tyres burned on a small industrial estate at Bray. Toxic smoke could be seen for miles.
Well, on arrival here, our main problem was getting enough water on it to make an initial strike. The water supplies in this area are quite low, so we've needed to run a line in from a 12-inch main, which is over a mile away, which has obviously taken a great deal of resources and time to do.
What's your strategy for fighting a fire like this, which clearly seems to be spreading?
Well, that's right. With an incident like this, as you can feel yourself, the radiated heat is tremendous. So what we need to do is to come well away from it, cut fire breaks through, and let the fire burn itself out under control.
The heat was so intense that firefighters had to repeatedly hose down their own fire engines and neighbouring buildings. But water had to be got from a hydrant a mile away, and the site had been operating illegally without planning permission. The operator, Mr. David Luckham from Plymouth, cannot be traced today.
Last night, flames leapt more than 200 feet into the air as 120 firemen battled to prevent the flames spreading to neighbouring buildings. No one was injured, but the heat was so intense, firemen had to hose down their own appliances.
The personnel had to clamber over stacks of tyres, pull tyres to one side to try and get close to the fire to actually fight it. We were also hampered with water. It was some considerable time before we could get a relay set in over a mile away to give us adequate water supplies.
Early this afternoon, firemen were still at the scene, and it's now been revealed hundreds of thousands of tyres have been stored illegally at the site, despite council enforcement notices ordering their removal. Local residents say the fire was a disaster waiting to happen.
This weekend, 100 firefighters were called to the site at Bray near Callington after it caught light with flames up to 200 feet high. The residents say they'd been trying for months to get the tip removed. Police say 2 teenage boys using the depot as a den probably started the blaze accidentally.
Still at the scene today.
More than 100 firemen worked for 12 hours to bring the inferno under control. The heat was immense. Firefighters were forced to hose down their own vehicles as well as neighbouring buildings to prevent them bursting into flames. Their efforts were hampered by a shortage of water. A tanker had to be brought in and water pumped from a 12-inch main over a mile away. The flames were too fierce to douse, and a digger had to be brought in to create a fire break.
As you can feel yourself, the radiated heat is tremendous. So what we need to do is to come well away from it, cut fire breaks through, and let the fire burn itself out under control.
Villagers and councillors at Bray are furious. They've been trying to get the illegally dumped tyres moved. They say the blaze was an accident waiting to happen.
We're on the site, dumped illegally, and these now will have to be moved, I think, in the near future.
Carradon District Council had obtained enforcement notices demanding the tyres were moved, but at the weekend there were an estimated 40,000 tyres on the site. The operator has been unavailable for comment. The local MP, Robert Hicks, is to see the Environment Secretary, Michael Heseltine, to ask that the law be changed, so in future a local authority could move the tyres first and take action to recover its costs later. Mr. Hicks thinks the present law is too slow. The fire was started accidentally by teenagers using the tyre dump as a den. They lit a small fire to keep themselves warm and forgot to put it out.
A Reading man.
The blaze which consumed the dump where thousands of old tyres were stored was said to have resembled an oil well fire in its intensity. People in nearby houses were warned to shut their windows and prepared to evacuate, mainly because of the intense toxic smoke. 100 firefighters tackled the inferno, which was so hot they had to hose down their own vehicles. At one stage they ran for cover as exploding electrics hurled debris from the building, a former slaughterhouse. A lack of hydrants on the unofficial site meant it took until the morning to control the flames, which needed constant damping down. The brigade, who last year expressed concern about the site, explained how difficult it had been to deal with the burning tyres.
Very, very hot, intense smoke, hampered by large columns, mounds of rubber tyres which had to get over, pull apart to get access in towards the building.
The operator of the site is believed to be out of the area. He He's failed to meet a magistrate's deadline imposed last December, giving him 4 weeks to get rid of the tyres. Meanwhile, the police have confirmed the blaze was started accidentally by 2 teenagers who'd made a den in the disused buildings. Last November on Spotlight, the fire brigade and the Carradon councillor for the area complained about the potential hazard from the tyres.
We fear that once they start going up, Bray would have to be evacuated, partly because of the fumes and partly because of the danger.
That dire prediction very nearly came true, according to those living nearest the dump. And there was anger amongst locals that despite warnings, the fire still started.
I'm damn no business to allow it to accumulate under any circumstances whatever.
The councillor who complained about the dump last year condemned the legal process, which, despite enforcement orders, failed to get rid of the tyres.
Legislation is too slow.
Last week, Carradon Council produced plans to improve the site, but locals faced with the wreckage on their back doors say this is shutting the stable door after the horse has bolted.